Hey everyone, my name is James. I'm going to be teaching you an awesome class today. This class is a themed class, so I'm going to be taking you on a canoe trip that may involve some portaging. This is a great class if you plan to get out in the summer and do some canoeing, and if not, it's still a great workout either way. For this class, you're just going to need 2 kettlebells of the same weight at the very minimum. You can use more if you've got more. You're also going to need a dowel or a broomstick or bonus points if you actually have a canoe paddle. How it's going to work is I'm going to explain one section at a time. We've got a warm-up, activation, and a work series. So I'll explain the warm-up first, and then the instructions are going to show up right on the wall here magically, and then you're going to pause, work through it, unpause when you're done. I'll explain the next, and so on and so on. So we're going to get right going with our warm-up. We're going to start with our 90-90s. So we're going to be seated on the floor, feet planted, angled out slightly. From here, we're just going to windshield wiper our knees side to side. If this is easy for you with the support of our hands, keeping our torso tall, we can remove our hands and do it without, still trying to keep that torso nice and tall. After that one, we're going to do some ankle circles in a half kneeling position. So you may want to use a pillow or a block if you're at home. And from here, we're just going to really bend into that front knee and do some nice big circles, just like that. 15 seconds each direction, and then we would switch sides. The next one we're going to be doing is palm lifts. So on our canoe trip, we're going to be using a lot of grip strength when we're paddling, lugging gear on our portages, or gripping on the canoe when we got it on our shoulders. So for this one, we're going to be in our tabletop, fingers spread nice and wide, and from here we're just going to lift our palms off the mat, up and down. We're going to try to keep our knuckles glued to the floor, and we're just going to work through this one for the 30 seconds. After that, we're going to get into our dowel dislocates, or our paddle dislocates. So just getting some shoulder mobility going, we're going to grab our dowel nice and wide. We're going to be bringing it overhead and then into the small of our back. And important for this one is when we bring it overhead, we don't want to arch our back. We want to tuck those ribs in, stay nice and tall and straight, and working through that one. You can go ahead and pause the video now as soon as you see the instructions there, and then we'll get going. All right, so you're done the warm-up. We're going to get going with our activation. So for our activation, we're going to be starting with some marches with a suitcase carry, because on our portage, you're walking a lot, you're usually stepping up onto rocks, you're carrying extra gear in your hands, and this one is a bit of balance, because sometimes the wind is blowing and you got to stand steady. So we're going to grab our kettlebells, just like this, suitcase carry. We're going to make sure that our shoulders are on our back body, we're not rounding forward. And then from here, we're just going to be doing nice and slow marches. So super slow, I'm not trying to break a record here. And we've just got 12 of these, really just working on our balance, and we got a bit of grip strength as well. Once we're done those, we're going to be doing a deep squat, and we've got variations for this one. So if you can't do this first one, I'll show you another one that hopefully you can do. For this one, we're going to get into a nice deep squat position. Our kettlebell is going to be on one side. We're going to try to stay tall with our torso. We're not trying to round. And from here, we're just going to grab our kettlebell, activate our core, stay nice and strong, and then twist, go back, grab our kettlebell, and we're going to work through the reps of this. Bring kettlebell side to side. This deep squat position is great on canoe trips or camping trips, because oftentimes we don't have chairs, and when we're cooking or making the fire, this is a really useful position to be in. If you don't currently have the mobility for this deep squat one, the variation I'm going to suggest is that we stand up and we take a goblet grip, and then from here we're just going to do a half squat with a twist. So we want our feet shoulder width apart. We're going to come to this half squat, not max depth. We're going to give a little twist side to side, stand up tall, come back down to that half squat, twist, twist, and up. We're going to just work through the same reps for that one. Our next one is going to be a lunge with our half kneeling lunge with our dowel twist. So again, we can use a pillow or a block for our knee if that feels good. And then from here, we're going to get into this position, and we want to think about bringing our back hip forward, front hip back, so we're squaring our hips to the top of our mat or the room we're working in. And then from here, I'm activating my hips, and I'm just going to be doing some twists side to side, working on that mobility. So we're going to do the reps on this side, and then we would switch knees, and then do the reps on the other side. This one is good because sometimes when we're in the canoe, we're changing up positions a lot, especially if you're in the canoe for a lot of hours. Sometimes a half kneeling with the paddle, and we're also always looking at our surroundings. So that's a great one. Our next one is going to be our dead bug, so activating our core for this one. We're going to be lying on our backs just like this, knees at 90, knees stacked over hips, hands are going to be pointed towards the ceiling just like this, and from here we're going to alternate opposite arm, opposite leg. Extending all the way long, bringing back up. Extending long, bringing back up. What tends to happen is when we extend, our low back wants to lift off the ground. We want to think about tucking that tailbone under and pressing that low back to the ground as we work through these reps. All right, that is our activation series. So you can go ahead and pause as soon as you see the exercises there, and then we'll get going with the work. All right, so now that we're done our warm-up and our activate, we're gonna get going with our first work series. We've got 2 work series today. Our first one is going to be a double kettlebell reverse lunge with some overhead pressing. So sometimes when we're portaging, we may, especially if you're in Northern Ontario, where I'm from, you might fall waist deep into some bog or some muskeg, and when you got the canoe over your head, you got to be able to get up and press that canoe over your head to get it off you to take a break. So for this one, we're going to have our 2 kettlebells, and we're going to do a clean with these ones to get it up to our wrapped position. So we're going to start with them. I'm going to change position so you can see. We're going to start with them angling out towards each foot on each side. Then from here, we're going to hinge at our hips, bend our knees, get all the way down to when we can grab them. And then from here, we're going to press into the ground. We're going to bring the kettlebells up and then into our rack position. Nice loose grip when they come over. We want to make sure that our wrists are in a neutral position. They're not bent back. And then from here, we're going to get into our reverse lunge. So we're going to be standing with feet hip width apart. We're going to step back. We're going to need to hover, step up. And then from here, we're pressing overhead, keeping those ribs down, biceps by our ears. And then we're reverse lunge with the other one. Step up. We're pressing that canoe overhead, just like that. And we're going to work through 8 of those in total, 4 per side. After that, we've got our Russian paddles. So we're going to start in this position, seated on the floor. We have options to bring our feet off the floor, or we can keep them planted, leaning back to activate our core. I'm going to bring my feet off for a little extra challenge. From here, I'm going to grab the kettlebell just like this, and we're going to be doing some paddling motions. So this is kind of just like our Russian twist. with a twist because we're doing some paddling. So we're gonna do 10 repetitions of those, nice and slow. And that is our first work series. It's gonna be right there. You can pause and work through that. All right, we are all done our first work series. So we're gonna get going with work number 2. This one's going to start with a goblet squat. So we're gonna grab our kettlebell between our feet, hinge, bend, and then we're lifting it up, just like this. And then from here, we're going to stand with our feet shoulder width apart, slightly angled out. You may play around, you probably know what's best for you. And from here, we're going to sit back like we're sitting into a chair. Once we hit our bottom, we're going to drive into the ground and stand up nice and tall. Sit back like we're sitting in a chair, drive into the ground and up. All right, so that's our first one, goblet squats. And our next one is our reverse plank. So when it comes time to set up our camp, we're gonna be camping beside a beautiful river with some rapids. And what we like to do with rapids is swim down them at the end of the day. But with rapids, we wanna make sure that we are straight as a plank and we're face up. Because if our legs are dangling in the water, we're gonna hit a rock and get bruised. And if we're face down, I think you know what would happen. So, for our reverse plank, we have options. First option is to be on our forearms with our shoulders stacked over our elbows. And then we're just gonna come up into this reverse plank position. And we're gonna hold that for 6 breaths. The other option is to have straight arms. We can have our fingers pointed to the side. We can have our fingers pointed towards our feet. And we still want our shoulders stacked over our wrists. And just like this, same idea, straight as a plank, driving those hips to the ceiling. That's work number 2. I'm gonna put it right there. You can get going. And now we are all done our canoe trip. We did a lot of good stuff. We did some stuff that's gonna help us on our portages, some stuff that's gonna help us in the canoe, paddling, and all in all, a great strength workout. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you again for another class. Bye.